All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm sure there'll be some folks that will join us in a few minutes as well, but we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Amy Holter. I am the Vice President for Community Impact here at the Community Foundation. And before we jump in, I'll just go ahead and turn it over to my colleagues at the Community Foundation to introduce themselves so you know who's in the room here with us. I'll pass it over to Jose to get us started.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jose Casagrambino. Welcome to you all this morning, and thank you for being here. I'm the Community Impact Officer here at the Community Foundation. I almost forgot about that. I have not had my cap-in yet, and I'll send it over to Baltimore.
Good morning, Baltimore Rupert, Community Impact Officer as well. Nice to see you all. Pass it on to Annette.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Annette Williams, and I am the Community Impact Coordinator, and we're happy to have you here today. And now I'll pass it over to my colleague, Tricia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tricia, and I'm the Communications Manager for CFSC. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks so much, everyone. And we'll introduce our friends at the Vintners Foundation in just a minute. So I'll go ahead and open our slide deck today so you can see our presentation. All right, can everybody see that? All right, perfect. So this is our agenda for the day. First, we'll talk to folks from the Vintners Foundation, and then we'll do an overview of the Community Grants Program. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the technical side of the application process, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions. So we're very excited to jump into this today. So we're very happy to welcome Executive Director Mike Haney and Director of Donor Relations and Philanthropy Julia Conover from Sonoma County Vintners here today. I'll go ahead and turn it over to them to share a little bit about what the Vintners Foundation does.
Amy, thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here today. I can tell you one of the great and more enjoyable things that we do here at Sonoma County Vintners is our partnership with Community Foundation and all of our nonprofits out there like yourself that do so much extraordinary and critical work throughout the county. And we are just so honored to partner with each and every one of you every year. So I wanted to just jump on real quick to say thank you to all of you all for what you do within Sonoma County. Obviously, our wine community is very proud to do the fundraising that we can, and in partnering with the Community Foundation, who have been long-term partners with our foundation for many, many years. It's such a great win-win situation, and working with them, working with all of you is one of the true joys that we do every day. And that being said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, and Julia Conover, who's our Director of Donor Relations and Philanthropy. I always mess that word up.
It's a long title.
Yeah, exactly. But Julia will tell you a little bit more about our foundation, but thank you all so much for being here this morning, and thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Mike. Just to kind of reiterate some of the parts that Mike just spoke about, it is a privilege and an honor for us to work so closely with Sonoma Community Foundation, as well as all of our beneficiary partners throughout the years. More than 30 years, we've been partnering with our community to support in whatever capacity that we can as the Vintners Foundation. And all of our funding comes through our foundation and through our wine auction in September, which is our big fundraising event that we're always looking forward to. But we are thrilled to be able to be here and to support as many nonprofit organizations in our community as we can. If you have any direct questions about this partnership or about the grant process, please direct all of those to Community Foundation, as they kind of are our administrative leaders on this program, and we are thrilled to have their support as we move through this grant process. So again, just thank you for everything that you guys all do for our community, and thank you to Community Foundation for our continued partnership.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mike and Julia. Really appreciate you being here. All right. So One thing to note that we will have the Q&A at the end, but as we go, please feel free to put your questions into the Q&A that's at the bottom of the menu bar. We're checking that for your questions, and if it goes into the chat, we might miss it. So please use the Q&A instead of the chat function to put in your questions. And if you don't mind, please refrain from asking questions that only pertain to your organization or your application. We really want to make sure that we're spending folks' time on questions that are applicable to everyone in the room. But please, of course, always reach out to us with your individual questions related to your own application anytime. All right, so now we'll jump into an overview of the Community Grants Program. So as Mike and Julia mentioned, the Community Foundation and Sonoma County Vintners Foundation partner on this program, and the program really seeks to meet very broad and diverse needs in the community each year. The fundraising, the final decision making, and the check distribution, the important part, right, is done by the Vintners. And the Community Foundation provides that backbone administrative support that Julia mentioned. So because the program seeks to be very broadly accessible and responsive, the criteria each year may shift somewhat to address those current pressing needs. So we're really glad that you're here with us today to stay up to date on what those the criteria are for 2024. So in order to be broadly accessible, requests for the grant program are capped at $10,000. And this helps to ensure that as many organizations as possible are able to receive funding. And this is the same maximum grant amount that we had last year. So in terms of funding priorities, the year's program areas are pretty consistent with the 4 areas that have been previously funded. So those 4 areas are health and human services, environment, education, and arts and culture. We're going to dive into each one of those areas. But before we do, I wanted to go ahead and answer a question that often comes up, which is whether or not organizations can apply for multiple of those program areas. The answer to that is that organizations may only apply for funding in one program area, except if they are being a fiscal sponsor for another organization. So if an organization is fiscally sponsoring another group who is not a 501c3, then they are able to apply multiple times, once on behalf of themselves, and then once on behalf of one or more of those that they're fiscally sponsoring. So as we're going over the program areas, please think about the primary objective of the program that you're running when you're determining which area to apply for. So for example, if you're an arts organization providing arts education in schools, then likely fundamentally this would be an arts and culture application rather than education, because the purpose of your program is to further arts for young people. So I know that this can sometimes be a little bit confusing because our programs can often be very impacting many sectors. So please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about which area you should be applying for. And now I'll turn it over to Jose and Valdemar to share more information on the individual funding priority areas.
Thank you, Amy. Again, hope you guys are all caffeinated and ready, and we're ready to dive into the specific funding priorities within each program. And we're going to start with health and human services. For this program area, funding will target programs or projects that support the fundamental needs of our most vulnerable community members. And this year's focus is shelter and food insecurity. Applications that focus on providing shelter and food directly will have the highest probability of receiving funding. We know that disasters disproportionately impact people who are already vulnerable, and this program area also reflects the orientation of our grant making. This area is where we receive the highest number of applications, so it's such a broad funding priority, and there's a lot of need around this. Now moving into environment, this will be the same as previous years, recognizing that wildfires continue to be at risk in Sonoma County, and disaster mitigation is critical to helping reduce the risk of helping keep our community safe as possible. Funding will target disaster mitigation projects that seek to address the impacts of wildfires, primarily through fire fuel reductions. Approaches include, but are not limited to, prescribed grazing, prescribed burns, manual vegetation, and management. In addition to one aspect of those important fundamental priorities is creating an opportunity for careers in the future. Sustainable, well-compensated careers, so programs that bring the workforce training component to their requests, particularly reaching people who wouldn't otherwise have access to this career, will be prioritized. Now I'll hand it over to Valdemar to tackle education and arts.
Hello, good morning again. So the Sonoma County Vintners Foundation, they want to continue their longstanding commitment to early literacy. And it's a top priority, not just for us, but for us as a community. And we want to consider education as a priority this year again. And we acknowledge the challenges that have been encountered over the past 5 years in our communities. And we also recognize the need for accelerated progress in making quality literacy programs accessible. So for this year, similar to last year, education funding will target programs, projects that offer children and their families the opportunity to increase early literacy skills. And I also want to highlight that programs that support adults who are learning English as a second language are also encouraged to apply as well. Now, arts and culture. So we recognize the impact the arts have on the well-being and mental health through the unique healing benefits, and I support it completely as well myself. And our focus for 2024 is to support programs or projects that leverage creative expression as a therapeutic avenue for individuals facing mental health challenges. So this year, we aim to fund organizations that demonstrate a commitment to healing through the arts and prioritizing those who have integrated a healing-centric approach into their initiatives. So for this program, we recognize the challenges that the field of arts and mental health face historically. So we want to aim to lift those projects and make a significant and beneficial contribution to this area as much as we can. So now passing it back to Amy.
Thank you so much, Jose and Valdemar. So in summary, the priorities for our different program areas are shelter and food for health and human services, for environment, disaster mitigation. For arts and culture, we have mental health through the arts. And for education, we're really focusing on literacy skills. That's the one word I can't say. We often get asked how funding gets divided between these program areas. And we really don't know until the applications, we start receiving those applications. Because the funding is divided among the 4 areas based on the number of applications that we receive for each one. This way, we aim to ensure that all 4 areas are roughly the same in terms of their competitiveness. So for example, health and human services often receives a lot of applications. And so if, for example, health and human services received 50% of the applications, then we would aim to allocate about 50% of the funding to health and human services to make sure that the percentage of grants that are approved for each program area are about the same. So our criteria for evaluation is that we're looking for organizations whose proposals strongly align with the community grants funding priorities that we just went over. We're looking for, within the applications, we're looking for goals and a timeline that really align with the 1-year grant period. That period is from July 2024 to June 2025. And of course, we're always centering equity in this grant program. So we're looking for grant proposals that can demonstrate that they're reaching a diverse audience, increasing access to opportunities for communities that have been most severely impacted by disaster, by COVID-19, and by economic instability. Because we very much value your time. We know you have a lot of other things to do. So we've attempted to make the application as straightforward as possible. But we do want to let you know that the program is extremely competitive. So we consistently receive over 100 applications for this grant program. Last year we had about a 50-50 split of approvals and declines. And we anticipate that this year will be even more competitive. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of that. So for the criteria, you do need to be a 501c3 organization or a school that is either based in Sonoma County or is doing significant work in Sonoma County. If you're not a 501c3, as we mentioned earlier, you can apply through a fiscal sponsor, and we're very happy to support you with that process in the application individually. The first question in the application will actually ask you if you're a nonprofit or a school, and if you aren't a nonprofit or a school, then you'll actually be diverted out of the application, and you will connect with somebody on our team to help you through that process. Some of the programs that are actually ineligible for this grant program include scholarships or any sort of grant or loan to individuals, annual funds or capital campaigns, fundraising events, conferences, political or religious programs, projects that serve residents outside of Sonoma County primarily, and organizations that discriminate based on characteristics that are protected by law, of course. As I mentioned earlier, multiple grants in multiple areas are generally not eligible unless you have that fiscal sponsor relationship. And now I'll turn it over to Annette, who'll cover the application process and timeline.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Want to let you know the application is open now, and to apply, you can go to our homepage and look for the grantee login button, which is at the top right hand side of our homepage. And from there, you'll be directed to our online grant portal where you can sign in with your username and password. If you're new to our portal, you'll need to create a new account. Also want to let you know that as you answer your questions, the portal will automatically save your application answers. But there is a save button at the bottom of the application if that makes you feel better. In case, I know for me, it always makes me feel better if I can press that save button. So feel free to use that if you'd like. You can use any browser to access our portal, with the exception of Internet Explorer. It doesn't work very well, so I would not recommend that. Also want to let you know, for any kind of support regarding the application or questions or technical support regarding our portal, you can reach out to me or anybody on our team, and we'll make sure that you're taken care of. If you don't need to worry about which is the right person, because we will route those questions to the right person once we hear from you. With regard to the timeline, as I mentioned, the application is open. The deadline to submit your application is 5 p.m. Friday, April 12th. We expect to notify applicants in late May. The grant period is July this year through June next year. And the funds must be expended within that grant period. A final note to let you know, we encourage you to begin your application now and submit before the deadline. That way, if you have any questions or technical issues, we have enough time to respond back to you. At the very end, sometimes if we get a lot of calls, it might be hard to get back to you on time. So want to make sure that you've got everything you need taken care of. We're here to support you, so reach out to any of us anytime. And